Good morning, everyone and teacher. My group is conformed by Helen Rodriguez, Humberlis Niño, Ruben Rondon, and my person, Larry Morval. We are going to talk about United States, Mexico, and Canada Agreement, better known by its initials USMCA. What is the USMCA? The USMCA is a trade deal between the three countries, United States, Mexico, and Canada, which was signed on November 30, 2018. The USMCA replaced the North American Free Trade Agreement, also known as the NAFTA, which had been in effect since January of 1994. Important provisions of the USMCA. Per the Office of the United States Trade Representative, the USMCA is a mutually beneficial win for North American workers, farmers, ranchers, and businesses. When finalized and implemented, the agreement will create more balanced reciprocal trade that support high-paying jobs for Americans and grows the North American economy. NAFTA aimed to create a free trade zone between United States, Canada, and Mexico, and the USMCA used NAFTA as a basis for a new agreement. While the USMCA has a broad impact on trade of alkene between the three named nations. Some of the agreement highlights include: first, creating a more level playing field for American workers, including improved rules of origin for automobiles, trucks, other products, and disciplines on currency manipulation. Second, benefiting North Americans, farmers, ranchers, and agro-businesses by modernizing and strengthening food and agriculture trade in North America. Third, supporting a 21st century economy through new protections for United States intellectual property and ensuring opportunities for trade in North America services. Fourth town. New chapters covering digital trade, anti-corruption, and good regulatory practices, as well as a chapter devoted to ensuring that small and medium-sized enterprises benefit from the agreement.
History. A major event that treaty has its history, which was born in 1965 with the integration between the United States and Canada when they carried out the signing of the Automotive Pact. The same year saw the integration between Mexico and the United States, with the establishment of the Maquiladora program in northern Mexico. In 1979, Ronald Reagan, who at the time was the President of the United States, proposed an agreement to liberalize trade in North America, starting negotiations on a comprehensive free trade agreement in 1990, and for which Canada demonstrates its interest in joining this new project. Between 1991 and 1992, ministerial meetings of negotiation were held between the heads of government of the three participating countries, and 14 months later, exactly on 12 August of the year 1992, NAFTA is a regional agreement, signed between 11th and 17th December of the same year in Ottawa, Canada, in Mexico City between 14 and 17 December, and in Washington, D.C. between 8 and 17, stepping into force on January 1st, 1994, when the ratification procedures was completely by the legislative branch of each country. On April 7, the United States Court of International Law declared that the customs authority of that country violated an article of NAFTA by applying a law called the Beer Amendment, trying to prevent unfair competition from goods coming in from Canada and Mexico. 3 years later, several Mexican transport companies are demanding $6 billion from the United States to compensate for the ban on crossing the border encouraged by the U.S. transport unions, which was partially lifted in 2007. In September of 2016, an electoral debate was held where the then candidate and now President of the United States, Donald Trump, I assure you that NAFTA has been the worst treaty signed by your country and considers that it is the cause of companies and jobs disappear from the United States. Regarding the 2017, Mexico begins a period of consultations to set its position on the treaty. In April, President Trump announced talks to reform NAFTA. The first round of the renegotiation between the three signatory countries was held in Washington in August, but unfortunately, no agreement was reached. So on the 22nd of the same month, Donald Trump threatened to abandon the agreement. In September, the second round of NAFTA is held in Mexico City, where progress is achieved in some chapters, but without touching on the most controversial issues, such as the rules of origin in the automotive sector. Similarly, the United States proposed to include a clause called sunset that would require a review of the treaty every 5 years. Between 22 and 27 September, the three countries held the third round of talks in Ottawa and once again made progress, but they recognized that the most controversial chapters had not been discussed. In October, the fourth round of NAFTA takes place in Washington, in which the difference in the resolution of commercial disputes are sharpened and the teams decide to extend the talks. The fifth round of NAFTA negotiation, without ministers with technical groups and presidents by the new threats, was held in November. In January of the 2018, the sixth round of the renegotiation of the treaty takes place, which is held in Montreal, Canada, with moderate optimism in the hope of unblocking the talks. Between February and March was the seventh round of talks with a confident Mexico after closing three chapters and highlighting the compromise of the negotiation teams. The United States begins to apply tariffs on its import of steel and aluminum in November. In January of the 2018, the sixth round of the renegotiation of the treaty takes place, which is held in Montreal, Canada, with moderate optimism in the hope of unblocking the talks. Between February and March was the seventh round of talks with a confident Mexico after closing three chapters and highlighting the compromise of the negotiation teams. The United States begins to apply tariffs on its import of steel and aluminum, excepting Canada and Mexico on condition that they reach a NAFTA. agreement by the end of May. In May, after the failed rounds, high-level meetings begin in Washington, in what is considered the final stretch to achieve negotiation, and the White House declares that Donald Trump is considering negotiating separately with Canada and Mexico. Mexico, for its part, suspends preferential tariff treatment for a wide variety of goods from the United States, just as Canada applies tariffs to dozens of products from the United States, to which the United States responds with a complaint to the World Trade Organization against the European Union, Canada, China, Mexico, and Turkey for the tariffs imposed. Finally, on August 8 in Washington, a high-level meeting begins. A day later, the United States and Mexico agree on the importance of NAFTA, and Trump points out that there could be a big trade deal with Mexico, and that the bilateral relationship is getting closer and closer. Both Trump and former President of Mexico, Enrique Peña Nieto, announced a bilateral trade agreement that the U.S. President qualifies as incredible for both parties, and that could be joined by Canada, where the Canadian government affirmed that it will only sign a new trade agreement with both countries if it is good for Canada, but assured that is irregular contact with both partners and will continue working for a modernized NAFTA.
Principal change.
Main change from NAFTA to USMCA. First, certification of origin. Exporters are no longer required to complete a formal certificate of origin. Certification of origin can be achieved using an informal documentation such as commercial invoices, and can be completed by exporter, importer, or producer. Certification documentation under USMCA must be kept for a period no less than 5 years. Custom declaration and trade facilitation. The treaty also includes a section on the use of information technology to accelerate trade in goods. All the three countries require to have all formats necessary to trade electronically and to allow any custom declaration and related document to be filed electronically to lower trade barriers between Mexico, Canada, and United States, and make a business process to faster for all. Other changes included in this treaty is about intellectual property. Copyright terms are extended from 50 years to 70 years and after author's death. Canada has a transition period of 2.5 years on terms of protection for copyright. Sunset clause. The terms of USMCA will remain in effect for a period of 16 years. at the which time the parties can choose to revisit or renegotiation term or withdraw from agreement altogether.
USCAM objectives. And I'm gonna talk to you about the USCAM objectives, okay? So, I'm gonna start with the first objective, that is the strengthening North American competitiveness, okay? So, the USCAM should be aimed at strengthening North American competitiveness as a production export platforms that promoting a greater participation and more industry and company into the region, and it generates more global value chains that can be strengthened to the regional supply. So advancing these processes is essential to promote the development of capacities of the region in order to maintain the extrinsic knowledge and skill that all human resources and industry that require continuous innovating and adding to the value. To achieve this is a priority. First, promote the goods between the USCAM country to be more predictable and agile and transparent, seeking better custom procedures. Second, promote measures that prevent rules and regulation from constituting injustified barrier disguised obstacle to free trade, and promote practice in these processes that planning, the implementing or reviewing of regulations, expand the categories for the temporary entry of business people, improve the times, transparent in the processes for the entry to the seek innovate mechanisms to the major labor mobility, and establish regional mechanisms to promote the design and implementation work and skill development programs and new educational models to facilitate the adaptation to the worker and requirement to the new maker labor market. The second objective is move toward an inclusive and responsible regional trade. In recent years, global concerns have grown up to move toward more inclusive and sustainable growth models. The USAM is an opportunity to promote a level playing field and to more entrepreneurs and more SMEs to competitively into the international trade and include labor environment to the gender provisions. Therefore, we will focus on generate regional cooperation mechanisms that encourage greater participation of small and medium-sized companies in regional supply chains, strengthen and comply with national provisions and international commitments in labor matters, strengthen complying with national provisions and international commitments in labor matters, establish measures against acts of corruption that affect the trade and investment. This is so important, okay? And strengthen cooperation and dialogue between the USAM countries on trade and the environment and seeking both to the border infrastructure, and incorporate the greater perspective in some provision of the treaty. The third objective is take advantage of the opportunity of the 21st century economy. The accelerated development of information and communication technology has boosted the digitalization, the economy, and grow the Internet of the Things, trialing the expansion of electronic commerce and advancing toward a fourth industrial revolution, where the manufacturing sector face new challenges but it also has new tools to its both and its growth. So, in this new context, facilitating trade in service, promoting greater integration and telecommunication infrastructure, and strengthening the regional framework for the protection of intellectual property and are essential to generate more opportunity for trade and investment, or strengthening development in the region, and support by new technologies. To achieve this is a priority. Update the scope provisions, okay? Energy provisions, in order to take advantage of the potential derived from the change that have occurred in the energy industry in the region, and promote the development and the digital economic, electronic commerce and provisions of financial service through the digital platform. Promote greater integration of the telecommunication market in the three countries in total agreement, in order to take advantage of the reform carried out in this sector. Promote effective protection of intellectual property and maintaining a balance between the public interest and that of the other innovators. Alright, the last objectives in this agreement is promote certainty of trade and investment in North America. NAFTA was a factor of certainty in the integration of North America. For this reason, it's essential to maintain in this new agreement and promote provision to contribute to making a foreign trade operations and investment in the USMCA more predictable, right? It's so important. In this dispute, settlement mechanisms play a crucial role, which over more than 2 decades have proven the effectiveness as a new instrument that make a regional trade more predictable, in addition to incorporating the most present of transparency and participation in other relevant actors. So, due to above, it is necessary consolidate the legal regime of the productive companies of the state that allow them an efficient commercial operations, and modernize all the dispute resolution mechanisms that to make them more agile, transparent, and effective. And by the end, promote free competitions and improve cooperation and the exchange of information among the authority of the USMCA country in order to maintain an efficiency to the markets, to the protection of the consumer rights.
For more information, click on the following links. Thanks for your attention.